Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better.
Some help from Socrates. At the end of the previous video, we considered the value of working on yourself every day using some effective spiritual practice or other with humility and gratitude. If you really knew that, you'd be doing it already. In addition to gifting us with the so-called Socratic method of skillful questioning of students to lead them to understand for themselves, which is the best method of teaching ever devised, Socrates also left us two major ideas. First, he was the first major philosopher in the Western tradition to emphasize the importance of ethics. Before Socrates, philosophers had been primarily focused on first philosophy, which is ontology, the study of being, and epistemology, the study of apprehension. He added axiology, the study of value, as being just as fundamental and perhaps even more important than first philosophy. In other words, he changed the course of Western philosophy. Naturally, some philosophers think that change beneficial, and others think it detrimental. I'm in the former camp. Second, he advocated the thesis that there is no such thing as moral backsliding. When we really know that something is good to do, we do it. In other words, as Dr. Hawkins puts it in Truth Versus Falsehood, quote, Socrates' dictum is that all human error or wrongdoing is involuntary, end quote. If Socrates' dictum is correct, and I agree with Dr. Hawkins that it is, then we'll automatically do something if we really understand that it's good to do it. The problem isn't just that typically what we believe is based on perception, which is not a source of knowledge, in the strict sense of knowledge as the unthinkability of mistake. Yes, that's a problem. Lots of things can go wrong with perception. If there were a reliable way to distinguish veridical, true perceptions from non-veridical perceptual illusions and delusions, we'd never make mistakes by relying on perceptual evidence. The fact that we do make such mistakes demonstrates that perception is unreliable. So the problem is also that judgments based on perceptions may be false, and we may not realize that they are false. It sometimes happens, or could happen, that there's no intrinsic way to tell whether or not some particular perceptual judgment is true. Remember that every putative truth is relative to our level of consciousness. Propositions are not just true or false independently of being apprehended. Recall that, with respect to the log energy scale of human consciousness from 1 to 1,000, it's level 200 that is the most important divide. Why? The levels below 200 are inordinately linked with attitudes, emotions, motivations, beliefs, behaviors, and activities that are spiritually and karmically detrimental. They are therefore indicative of spiritual pathology, end quote. A human who calibrates at 199 or lower is too dominated by the animal part of the brain and insufficiently guided by the neocortex. Quote, the levels below 200 indicate varying degrees of emotionalized egocentricity in which the rights of others are ignored. Defective reasoning, narcissism, end quote. From Power versus Force. As a reminder, this does not mean that such a person has less moral worth or value than anyone else. From the moral point of view, what it means is that the priority in such a person's life should be to increase the level of calibration to 200 or higher as soon as possible. Again, philosophers often talk about this as taking the moral point of view. From the spiritual point of view, what elevating the level to 200 or higher means is that the possibility of love becomes realistic. Above level 200, a unique energy field emerges for the first time, labeled the etheric brain, or spiritual energy body, traditionally termed Kundalini energy. In the human, the spiritual or etheric body is individual. It's the non-physical vehicle of an individualized spiritual content, in other words, karma, end quote. From Truth Versus Falsehood. So, if you or someone you know calibrates lower than 200, that person is deprived of the asset of spiritual energy. That's a waste of human potential. Compare that to our pets. Cats calibrate at 240 and dogs at 245. Chimpanzees calibrate at 305 from transcending the levels of consciousness. Furthermore, recall that humans who calibrate below 200 are unable to use energy testing to help themselves make better decisions. It's not surprising that they may be stuck on beliefs that are keeping them stuck, even if they want to be happier. For example, they may believe that they have to learn and assimilate a vast amount of spiritual information in order to raise their calibration. That's false. Spiritual evolution doesn't come from the brain, but from the heart. Spiritual evolution is not the consequence of knowing about the truth, but the willingness to become that truth. It is not just spiritual truth, but the degree of one's devotion to it that empowers it to become transformative, end quote. Like other sages, Dr. Hawkins offers some simple guidance that can be very elevating. Quote, "Be kind to everything and everyone, including oneself, all the time, with no exception. Forgive everything that is witnessed and experienced, no matter what. Approach life with humility. Forgo all perceptions of gain, desire, or profit, and thereby be willing to be of selfless service," end quote. Simply decide to be kind to everyone without exception and to be of good will. Spiritual intention can be immensely powerful. Accept personal responsibility for the quality of your life. Focus on the witnessing consciousness instead of on its contents. Non-resistance leads to non-attachment, end quote. It's by detaching from emotional involvement and stepping back that we practice surrendering our personal wills. Keep it simple. Yes, loosening the animal energy of the egoic self can be difficult, but doing so also releases negativity and emotional bondage. It's the way to a higher calibration. The higher your personal calibration, the happier you'll be. In the next video, let's consider you're getting some one-on-one help from a qualified spiritual teacher. Let's end emotional distress.